Let's face it, we're in a climate crisis. All the scientific evidence in the past 25 years points towards that. It's imperative that we limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels as prescribed by the UN, and we're well on our way to exceeding that. While that doesn't mean the world will be completely uninhabitable, it does mean that life on Earth will become significantly harder. We're going to see millions of people displaced as climate refugees, and crops will be harder to grow. Now, I've always had a passion for cars. Me and many other people across the world share this passion. Whether it's a big American V8 or a small high-revving Honda VTEC motor, we all love the sound of an internal combustion engine. But I must acknowledge that this passion is contributing to climate change. According to the EPA, 29% of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions in 2019 came from passenger cars, and that doesn't even include air travel, shipping, or trucks. Transportation contributes heavily to climate change, and the internal combustion engine is to blame. While engines are getting cleaner each year, it's still not enough. Because of this, many automakers are starting to switch over to battery electric vehicles to stem emissions. This switch is welcome, but it still doesn't completely solve the problem. EVs don't emit any greenhouse gas emissions themselves, but they aren't completely clean either. While a conventional gas or diesel car creates roughly 7 tons of CO2 in its production cycle, a battery electric vehicle will create 2 to 3 times that due to the rare earth metals needed. And EVs still make up only 2% of vehicles worldwide. There are still millions of gas and diesel powered vehicles on the road being sold today that are going to be with us decades from now, creating further greenhouse gas emissions. There may be a way to stem all this though. We already have the technology. Direct carbon capture and storage removes excess carbon emissions from the atmosphere and stores them or reuses them by combining them with hydrogen to produce synthetic fuels, making the majority of vehicles on the road carbon neutral, thus reducing every greenhouse gas emission even further. So how does this all work? Well, gasoline and diesel are at their core just hydrocarbons. When you remove excess carbon from the air, you can combine it with hydrogen via the Fischer-Tropsch process to create, hydrocarbons. This means that you can create carbon-neutral gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, and we can fuel every vehicle on our roads without introducing any new carbon emissions. Effectively, every vehicle on our road will become net zero emissions. Not only that, but this would also decrease our dependence on both rare earth metals and fossil fuels. It's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. While a conventional gas or diesel car creates 7 tons of CO2 in its production cycle, a BEV will create 14 to 21 due to the rare earth metals needed in production. Cutting out both fossil fuels and rare earth metals would not only knock out transportation emissions, but it would also take a huge chunk out of mining and oil production emissions. Synthetic fuels can also be used in applications such as aerospace and shipping, where battery electric vehicles are impractical. The 10 largest ships in the world put out as many emissions as all the world's passenger cars do in a year. Switching from bunker to synthetic diesel would instantly knock out one of the biggest producers of greenhouse gas emissions. The airline industry has been routinely criticized for its part in climate change in recent years. Switching to synthetic jet fuel would be one of the most effective and easiest ways to stem climate change. Carbon capture and synthetic fuel would also both create jobs in the renewable energy sector and preserve blue-collar and engineering jobs in the oil and gas industry. Since hydrogen can be produced emissions-free from depleted oil fields, people presently employed by these industries can still survive. Petrochemical engineers could find new ways to make the technology cheaper and easier to distribute. And while some may say that that's just greenwashing by oil companies, most companies tackling this are green startups. And it may not even be a bad thing for the oil industry to fund these projects. It shows the beginning of a transition away from fossil fuels and a willingness for them to use their money and expertise to help fight climate change. Climate capture and synthetic fuel are not a silver bullet. While they both have an enormous amount of benefit, they are costly and they won't come overnight. In addition, transportation is only part of the equation. We still need to tackle climate change in many other areas too. But these technologies will be vital tools in helping us fight climate change. And with these technologies improving year over year, and many other technologies like these instead of popping up, we can help preserve the planet and leave a better future for our children and grandchildren. Synthetic fuels and carbon capture will become a vital tool in the fight against climate change.